Science has only just begun to find and describe all of the species on Earth. By some estimates, only 20% have been described. This year, Mongabay reported on newly described species from nearly every continent, including an Ecuadoran ant whose name broke the gender binary, an acrobatic North American skunk, an Australian killer tobacco, a fuzzy orange bat from West Africa, tiny screech owls from Brazil, and more. Though a species may be new to science, that doesn't mean it has not yet been found and given a name by local and indigenous communities. With humans sending probes to Mars and the Sun, one might think we've already explored the full extent of our own planet. But scientists say we've only begun to find and describe the riches here on Earth. I think most people believe that we know most species on Earth, but in the best case scenario, we know 20% of Earth's species. Mario Moura, a professor at the Federal University of Paraíba in Brazil, told Mongabay in a March 2021 interview. Moura is the co-creator of a study that maps out places in the world likely to hold the highest number of species unknown to science. As it turns out, there are a lot. This year, Mongabay reported on newly described species from nearly every continent, including a fuzzy orange bat from West Africa, tiny screech owls from Brazil, an acrobatic North American skunk, a snake from the Himalayas, found on Instagram, a new whale species in the Gulf of Mexico, an Ecuadoran ant whose name broke the gender binary, and an Australian killer tobacco. Every year, as scientists explore the world's ecosystems, search herbaria and fungaria, sequence organisms' DNA and, increasingly, browse social media, they come across species of plants and fungi that have not been scientifically described, says the State of the World's Plants and Fungi 2020 report, released by the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew. However, though a species may be new to science, that doesn't mean it has not yet been found by humans, or given a name. Many species that are new to science are already known and used by people in the region of origin, people who have been their primary custodians and often hold unparalleled local knowledge, writes Alexander Antonelli, Director of Science at RBGQ. Let's take a look at some of the new to science species Mongabay reported on in 2021. Before we go on, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Subscribe so that you don't miss out on anything. A group of researchers found a fuzzy orange bat species in the caves and mining tunnels of the Nimba Mountains in Guinea, West Africa. The newly described species has been named Myotis nimbensis, in honor of its home mountains, described as African Sky Islands, with peaks rising 1,600 to 1,750 meters, about a mile, above sea level. The bats are believed to be critically endangered. Bat Conservation International and local mining company Société de Mines de Fer de Guinée are working to reinforce the tunnels and caves so that the bats will have a safe home in the mountain. An orange-furred bat, new to science, has been described from the caves and mining tunnels of the Nimba Mountains in Guinea, West Africa. A group of researchers, led by the American Museum of Natural History and Bat Conservation International, encountered the fuzzy mammal in 2018 while conducting field surveys and knew right away it was an unusual find. It's a spectacular animal. It has this bright orange fur, and because it was so distinct, that led us to realize it was not described before. Winifred Frick, chief scientist at Bat Conservation International and an associate research professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, said in a statement. Discovering a new mammal is rare. It has been a dream of mine since I was a child. The newly described species has been named Myotis nimbensis, in honor of its home mountains. Two new species of tiny screech owls from the Amazon and Atlantic rainforests in Brazil have been described by science. They're cute little owls, probably 5 or 6 inches long, 13 to 15 centimeters, with tufts of feathers on their heads, said John Bates, curator of birds at the Field Museum in Chicago and one of the researchers who described the new species in the journal Zootaxa. Some are brown, some are gray, and some are in between. The discovery was the result of several years of work in forests, natural history collections, and the laboratory, analyzing the black-capped/tawny-bellied screech owl complex, Megascops atricapilla, M. watsonii, a group of owls with an uncertain number of species. Altogether, the researchers analyzed 252 owl specimens, 83 tape recordings of calls, and 49 genetic samples. To draw the birds out, we used tape recordings, Bates said. We'd record their calls and then play them back. The owls are territorial, and when they heard the recordings, they came out to defend their territory. By closely examining the appearance, calls and DNA of the screech owls, the scientists determined that there were enough differences to classify 2 new species. The new screech owls have been named the Alagoas screech owl, Megascops alagoensis, in reference to the northeastern Brazilian state where it lives, and the Xingu screech owl, Megascops stangii, in honor of the Xingu River in Amazonia and the late Sister Dorothy May Stang, AU.S Brazilian land rights activist and Catholic nun who was murdered in 2005 by those opposed to her activism. Although the owls are new to science, they are at risk of extinction and will likely be classified as critically endangered. Both new species are threatened by deforestation, said Jason Weckstein, a co-author of the study, associate professor and curator of ornithology at the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University. The Xingu screech owl is endemic to the most severely burned area of the Amazon by the unprecedented 2019 fires, and the Alagoas screech owl should be regarded as critically endangered given the extensive forest fragmentation in the very small area where it occurs. The Alagoas screech owl has been found in only 5 isolated forest fragments in Brazil's Atlantic forest. Less than 10% of the Atlantic forest remains, and only around 1% of this remaining forest is protected, despite having one of the highest degrees of species richness in the world. Researchers have described a new species of venomous snake, from one of the deadliest and most medically significant groups of snakes in Asia. The new reptile species, the Suhen's crite, Bungarus suheni, was previously grouped together with the many-banded crite, Bungarus multicinctus. However, after careful examination of the features and mitochondrial DNA sequence data from snake specimens collected between 2016 and 2019 from Yunnan Province, China, researchers decided there were enough differences to warrant a new species. The findings are published in the journal Zookeys. The Suhen's crites are found in rice fields and streams in monsoon forests at elevations from 800 to 1,560 meters, 2,600 to 5,100 feet, above sea level in southwestern China and northern Myanmar. A distinct number of bands, variations in its teeth, and the shape of its hemipens, or male reproductive organ, distinguish it from other members of the crite family. Understanding the differences between lethal snakes provides essential information for antivenom development and proper snake bite treatment, the authors say. Researchers believe it was the species of snake that killed famed herpetologist Joseph B. Slowinski during a 2001 expedition in northern Myanmar. 3 species of the black and white banded crites from China were previously put under the same name many-banded crite, which would hinder appropriate medical treatment, the authors said in a statement. It is very dangerous, Gernot Vogel of the Society for Southeast Asian Herpetology in Germany and one of the study's authors, told Live Science. Because crites are highly lethal, understanding their species diversity and geographic distribution is vital for saving human lives. Crite species are active at night and they often enter houses in search for food, Vogel said. So often sleeping people are bitten while touching the snake during their sleep. Scientists describing a new species of ant, Strumigenes aires they, have broken with conventional naming traditions and used the pronoun they instead of the traditional male or female form to promote non-binary gender inclusivity. The new ant, described in a recent paper in Zookeys, was named after the late artist and human rights activist Jeremy Ayres. Traditionally, a species named after a person would have an I appended at the end of the name for males, or AE for females, in this case, Ayresy or Ayersy. Instead, the researchers went with Ayres they. They did this to honor Ayres and the large number of people who do not identify with either the male and female genders, according to study author Douglas Boer, a Yale postdoctoral researcher, and co-author Philipp Honel, a doctoral student at the Technical University of Darmstadt, Germany. In contrast to the traditional naming practices that identify individuals as one of two distinct genders, we have chosen a non-Latinized portmanteau honoring the artist Jeremy Ayres and representing people that do not identify with conventional binary gender assignments. Strumigenes Ayres they, the authors wrote in the study. Ayres was an eclectic artist, publishing photography books, authoring a column in Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, and writing lyrics for both REM and the B-52s. Indeed, REM lead singer and songwriter Michael Stipe joined Boer in writing the etymology section of the paper explaining the decision to use the pronoun they to honor the artist. Ayres is remembered today as a fixture of the Athens, Georgia, art community, according to a local paper. Honel first encountered the ant while working on his doctoral thesis at Darmstadt, researching ant communities in the Choco area of Ecuador. Of the specimens he looked at, one stood out for its unique shiny exoskeleton, for which Honel couldn't find a matching species. Honel then contacted Boer, an expert on the ant genus Strumigenes, also known as trapjaw ants for their trapjaw mandibles. Boer quickly identified the specimen as a potentially undescribed species, kicking off the work to describe the new ant. What sets S. Ayres they apart from other ants in the genus is its signature shiny and smooth outer skin, or cuticle, as well as its long trap jaws, described by the researchers in the paper as a biological mousetrap. The Strumigenes genus itself is quite diverse. The various species' trapjaw mandibles can range from short to long, with the newly described species having large mandibles. Some species lack the trapjaw entirely. One common identifying feature of the genus is a sponge-like structure toward the base of the abdomen. According to Boer, the function of the sponge structure remains a mystery to scientists. In a study published in PLOS Biology in March 2021, Boer explores the evolution of the trapjaw mechanism and its gradual increase in length. The trapjaw mechanism itself is one of the fastest movements in any living creature, with the jaws snapping shut at a rate of up to 1.2 million meters per second squared.
Mongabay Reports is a series that shares evergreen articles from mongabay.com, read by myself, Mike DiGirolamo. This episode's feature article is Meet the Acrobatic Spotted Skunks of North America by Liz Kimbrough on the 15th of September, 2021. The familiar striped skunk of North America, think of the cartoon Pepe Le Pew, has a lesser-known cousin, the spotted skunk. These polka-dotted relatives are smaller, about the size of a fat squirrel, and do impressive handstands to warn predators before they launch their stinky spray. And now this skunk group has a few more members. Researchers analyzed spotted skunk DNA and found that rather than the 4 skunk species previously recognized by science, there are actually 7. Their findings are published in the journal Molecular Phylogenetics and Evolution. Scientists used DNA from 203 skunk specimens, both modern species and those preserved in museum collections. If we're trying to tell the full story of skunk evolution, we need as many samples as we can, Ferguson says. For example, we didn't have any modern tissues from Central America or the Yucatan. We were able to use museum collections to fill those holes. Skunks are notoriously difficult to study in the wild, partly because catching them is an easy way to get sprayed, and also because they are adept tree climbers who live in remote areas. For the researchers to get enough specimens to study differences in spotted skunk DNA, they used a method common in the days of the Wild West: wanted posters. We made wanted posters that we distributed across Texas in case people trapped them or found them as roadkill, said Ferguson, who collected specimens for this project while working on his master's degree at Angelo State University. People recognize spotted skunks as something special because you don't see them every day, so they're not the kind of roadkill that people just paint over. The paper's first author, Molly McDonough, a biology professor at Chicago State University and research associate at the Field Museum, was able to extract DNA from century-old museum specimens. It was really exciting to see who those individuals were related to. It turns out that one of those was a currently unrecognized endemic species in the Yucatan, McDonough said. Spotted skunks are sometimes called the acrobats of the skunk world due to their impressive handstands that give predators a warning that a noxious spray is coming. Their liquid deterrent contains sulfur-based organic compounds called thiols, which let off a blast of scent reminiscent of rotten eggs, a smell that can linger for days or weeks in the fur of a predator or unlucky pet. Handstands and rotten egg-smelling defenses are not their only unusual features. Spotted skunks also do something called delayed egg implementation, breeding in the fall, but not giving birth until the spring. Scientists think that some animals do this to put off birth until conditions are more favorable, such as when temperatures are warmer and food is more readily available. They delay implanting the egg in the uterus, it just sits in suspension for a while, Ferguson said. We want to know why some species have delayed implantation and others don't, and figuring out how these different species and skunks evolved can help us do that. Mapping out the different species lineages can also inform conservation efforts, Ferguson said. Once something has a species name, it's easier to conserve and protect, he said. If a subspecies is in trouble, there's sometimes less emphasis on protecting it because it's not as distinct as an evolutionary lineage as a species. Among the new species, the plain spotted skunk is in significant decline. The working hypothesis, Ferguson told Mongabay, is that the species was hit with a double whammy of habitat and prey loss as industrial agriculture spread into the Great Plains region of the U.S. where the skunks live. For example, spotted skunks were once abundant in Iowa, living in the spaces between small family farms where their prey, rodents and insects, were easily found. However, as farms were combined into larger monoculture, these wild in-between spaces were swallowed up into rows of corn, soy, and other crops that are doused with pesticides, leaving with little to no healthy habitat or food for wildlife. Currently, the plain spotted skunk is under consideration for listing as endangered under the U.S. Endangered Species Act at the subspecies level. Ferguson said that this study adds credence to the argument that this species represents a distinct evolutionary significant line and certainly warrants protection as a full species. Ferguson said he also hopes these new findings will encourage local scientists to get out and study these species in their own backyards. Although North American mammals and carnivores are among the most studied groups of animals, scientists are still discovering and learning new things about them. For example, there is little published literature on the endemic Yucatan spotted skunk, and learning more about simple things such as what they eat and how they move around could be important to understanding and conserving regional populations. The next step in my mind is to see how these 7 species differ from one another ecologically, Ferguson told Mongabay, as only then can we truly understand what it takes to conserve and protect these truly enigmatic small carnivores. This has been a special Mongabay audio report. Original article by Liz Kimbrough. I am your reader, Mike DiGirolamo. Special projects like this are made possible by our Patreon supporters. Please consider becoming a monthly sponsor via our Patreon page at patreon.com/Mongabay. As little as $1 per month will help us offset the production costs and hosting fees to help us keep making content like this. Keep up with all of Mongabay's news from Nature's Frontline at mongabay.com. Get updates via Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, where our handle is @Mongabay. Thanks for listening.
On a clear night in 2017, a team of students from Bogor Institute of Agriculture, IPB, set out into a lowland forest on the southwest coast of Java, Indonesia's most populous island. The students formed part of the Indonesian Herpetological Society's citizen science program named Jarakan Observasi Amphibi Reptil Kita, GO-ARC, which helps to compile a national database of reptiles and amphibians across the Indonesian archipelago. Within the Sankang Nature Reserve, a degraded lowland tropical rainforest covering some 21.6 square kilometers, 8.3 square miles, the students came across 5 frogs perched near a small pond that resembled the tree frogs from the genus Chirixylus. Following extensive laboratory analysis of these 5 specimens, the 4 IPB students along with researchers from Kyoto University in Japan and the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, LIPI, have now published the molecular, morphological, and acoustic description of a new frog species, Chirixilus pantiselaton, named after Java's south coast, Pantai Selatan in Indonesian. The research findings, published in the journal Raffles Bulletin of Zoology, describe the species as a small tree frog that can appear light yellow or light brown depending on whether it's in sunlight, with an adult male reaching 25.3 to 28.9 millimeters, 1 to 1.1 inches, in size. Misbahul Munir, lead author of the study, told Mongabay that although the taxonomic status of the Chirixilus genus is still debated, the agreed identification characteristics within the group provided the basis for scientific identification of the new species. The Chirixilus pantiselaton met the criteria of the genus Chirixilus, Munir said. In the study, we describe the horizontal pupils, free and deeply notched tongue, distinct tympanum membrane, opposed fingers, webbed toes, and the dilated discs on fingers and toes. In addition to these features, acoustic studies of the new species advertisement call found that the frog's tick 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 call was distinct from other species already described. The research team completed genetic tests to determine the relationship of the new species to other close relatives in Indonesia and worldwide, namely the Nongkhor Asian tree frog, Chirixilus nongkhorensis, Triloxunoi tree frog, C. Triloxunoi, Doria's Asian tree frog, C. dorii, Dudwa tree frog, C. dudwaensis, and the Assam tree frog, C. semus. Morphologically, dorsal color pattern, body size, Chirixilus pantiselaton is similar to Chirixilus nongkhorensis from Thailand, but genetically is closely related to Chirixilus triloxunoi, which also comes from Java, Munir said.